Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video we tell you why didn't the USA also scramble of Africa? America had already kind of colonized Africa prior to the scramble of the 1870s and 80s. In 1821, under President James Monroe, the American Colonization Society established colonies on the Pepper Coast, where Liberia was located. The Liberia capital of Monrovia was named after the president. Liberia was colonized for the sole purpose of sending free blacks back to Africa so that they couldn't stir up abolitionist sentiment and cause trouble for everyone, sir everyone. Even northern abolitionists who saw the chance to return to Africa as a gift rather than a detriment, thought it was a good idea. Around 3,000 free blacks would arrive in the colony by the 1830s. The colony was effectively run by the American Colonization Society as a proprietary colony rather than as a colony ran directly by Washington. In 1847, the colony, led by Joseph Jenkins Roberts, declared independence and the U.S. recognized the new nation of Liberia. Liberia would become a part of the U.S. sphere of influence, and was very important as it produced a lot of rubber by the turn of the 19th century. Many rebellions by native Africans against the African American elite would only be quelled by U.S. intervention. Another point is that after independence, only the former freed blacks gained power and representation, while the native Africans were disenfranchised. This would cause numerous rebellions and ultimately the Liberian Civil War of 1989 to 1997. But as to why we didn't colonize further is for a few reasons. Many Americans saw colonization as a bad thing for the United States. One of the reasons was that, as a former colony ourselves, it was immoral to take overseas possessions and colonies. Now, living in the year 2017, we might laugh at this given the annexation of Hawaii of 1898 and the Spanish-American War of 1898 which gave us the Philippines, Guam and Puerto Rico. But the scramble for Africa was in the 1870s and 80s, which was prior to the beginnings of an American colonial empire in the Pacific and Caribbean. Mark Twain was an avid anti-imperialist, writing numerous pieces trying to persuade against American colonization. A racist reasoning was that colonizing Africa would lead to more blacks coming to the US, which many did not want. Again, racism. The American Civil War had just ended and Reconstruction was underway. The Civil War killed between 800,000 and 1 million people, and the South was absolutely decimated. Reconstruction began shortly after, with the majority of government focus, armed forces, and funds being on the reconstruction of the South and the emancipation of blacks. The aim to give blacks racial equality by the government during this time didn't really coincide with subjugating the Africans. Reconstruction would not end until 1876 with the election of Rutherford B. Hayes, which overlaps considerably with the European scramble. We really didn't need to. Most European nations colonized Africa to gain raw resources such as rubber, iron, cotton and palm oil for their fast-growing and developing industrial economies. We already had vast amounts of iron, lumber, and cotton within our borders, as with other important resources such as oil later on in the century. We also had trade connections and influence in Latin America and the Pacific, where we got a lot of the goods we didn't already have in the US proper such as rubber. Europe had already effectively colonized Africa by the time America may have been somewhat interested. The Europeans had carved up nearly all of Africa by 1885 with only a few states remaining independent. We were lucky to continue having influence in Liberia during the time. We would have had no chance at getting colonies in Africa during the scramble in the first place. Even Russia couldn't compete against the Europeans when they tried to colonize Djibouti.